diet culture is toxic. Diet culture is part of a colonial agenda. It's a settler practice.
You're probably wondering, who the hell is this? Well, meet Dr. Athia N. Chowdhury. She's a Duke professor coming to the University of Richmond to be an expert on a panel for the week-long Pleasure Fest event. She will be leading a discussion called Unapologetically Fat, a body positivity panel discussion with women of color. I'm guessing no white girls were invited to the panel because Chowdhury has problems with white people.
Because people are angry, I think rightfully so.
Yes.
And they don't have a way to channel that anger into a more productive sense of like, okay, so how do I work on things in myself and versus how do I work on things in the public sphere? Because both of those things need to happen at the same time.
Absolutely.
And they rarely do, right? And it's why you have this impossibility in like the unbearable whiteness in fat spaces.
In this clip, Chowdhury explains how thinness is part of a white supremacist global capitalist nation building agenda.
Right. So I'm not interested in sort of like excavating in the past, like, oh, fat people were here, fat people were there. We know fat people have always existed. We know this for a fact. Body diversity, like body difference has always existed. That's not an argument that I'm interested in having, but rather to say like, do you understand your investment in thinness and how that connects to these other projects of nation making or global capitalism or white supremacy?
Is it me, or does she sound like a conspiracy theorist? A lot of conspiracy theorists blame the world's problems on the mysterious and non-existent they. Chowdhury does too. Quote, "Friend reminded me that writing is scared ritual, that I am blessed, giving blessings through the work, that they, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, all the names we give, coloniality, tried to cut out our wild tongues, and that forced us to speak in two languages, theirs plus ours." It doesn't end there, folks.
In the US's, imperial ports, such as in the Philippines. Again, like native boarding schools began like experimenting with the calorie to sort of determine like how much food did someone need in order to survive, or like if we made sure that they had X amount of proteins and X amount of carbohydrates and X amount of fats, would they be better off than they were before? How would we track this? We would track this by the calorie. We would track this by their weight and height. And other forms of disposition. So really, like the 20th century gives us this very rich way to think about like the export of healthism in its literal terms as a colonial project, right? As an imperial project of American empire that really sought to, sort of give us the idea that like health was entangled in a modern nation state.
Grab your tinfoil hats, because the calorie is part of the capitalist agenda to export a psyop on the new made-up word healthism around the world.
This question of capacity, sovereignty, governance shows up when we think about the history of the American calorie, right? What is the function of the calorie in the first place, or what is the function of diet in the first place? Like we think about, when we think about food studies and the United States, we think about McDonald's, right? How the U.S. brought processed foods and fatty, unhealthy things into indigenous and native foodways. But what we don't think about is how the U.S.'s primary export in the 20th century was healthism, right? And diet culture.
I hate to break this news to you, But skim milk is white supremacist. But also Hindu nationalist.
You took everything from me.
We can, actually delve a little deeper. And I know you brought up skimmed milk a little earlier, but like part of my fascination with skimmed milk is like how it came into political consciousness and how it's been used by both like white supremacist men in the United States in 2016, as well as by Hindu nationalists in the 1980s, specifically around like Hindu nationalist women who are trying to protect their nation from the Muslim intruder figure.
Chowdhury is clearly an unhinged, insecure fruitcake. By the way, she's a paid professor at Duke. She thinks the whole world is judging her all the time.
The other day I was picking up dinner for me and my partner, and it was 2 servings of food, and I went to go pick it up, and I was like, oh my God, are they going to think that I'm the one eating this 2 servings of food? And I was like, wait, why am I even worried about this? Why am I even worried? Like, why would they make the assumption that I'm eating this alone and all of this on my own? And even if I were, what's the big deal? And again, it's that uncomfortable grazing, right? Yes. Between what you know about yourself versus the assumptions that people have. And I think for so long, I used to believe that it was all in my head, right? Because like, thinness and white supremacy will try to gaslight you all day long.
Talk about it.
Quick note. Despite all this talk about how evil white people are, she seems to be married to a honky.
Hey, damn, that's a cold-ass honky.
Scam. Perhaps she's just a race hustler and a swindler. Up next, we hear her deep philosophical ponderings and reflections on what it means to be fat and an inheritor of famine and starvation.
The journey that you mapped out in terms of your relationship to forced diets and forced restriction, and just the lengths in which your parents went to or your family went to in order to slim you down, it really is a mode of protecting you from a white supremacist society. Like that completely maps out in so many ways to my own experience. And I oftentimes think like, okay, so what does it mean for me to be the inheritor of histories of famine and starvation and to be a fat body, right? And how does that feel for someone like my father, who, has really been able to communicate his sense of love, emotion, and all the other things he's unable to say, verbally through food.
Sure sounds like the evil Western capitalist white supremacist culture has allowed her to live high on the hog. I mean, to be a hog. Oops. Chowdhury is from Orlando, Florida, the suburbs there, and went to Timber Creek High School, where 99% of all students graduate. America must be a really evil place if her parents can go from immigrants to suburbs in such a short period of time. If you were a University of Richmond parent, and maybe you are, is this the kind of person you want influencing your child? Someone who blames their own enormous weight problems on idiotic, I am a victim conspiracy theories. I am sure she thinks personal responsibility is a white supremacist concept developed to oppress her. She's fat because she eats 16 Big Macs a day, okay? She refuses to do what she needs to do to stop being repulsively fat because it is easier, and I might add more lucrative, to be, drumroll, a victim. Her ramblings are not just idiotic and pitiful, they are anti-science. Oops, science is a white supremacist concept. But being fat means a shorter life. Obesity leads to hypertension, dyslipidemia, heart failure, type 2 diabetes, osteoarthritis, and many other health problems. It is the 5th leading risk for global deaths. But instead of having an honest talk about what we can do to be healthier or to be more supportive of people on their health journey, we have to pretend that beauty standards, fitness culture, and thinness are evil ideas invented by and perpetuated by evil, white, imperialistic, capitalist dogs. For $81,000 a year, you can send your daughter to the University of Richmond to learn the joys of sitting on her ass all day while eating pizza. And when she is fat-shamed, it's your fault, Mr. and Mrs. Parent, for having enough sense to live a healthy life. You despicable white supremacist, you. Stay tuned, because we aren't done covering Pleasure Fest at the University of Richmond just yet. Until next time, this is Rob Smith. Over and out.
The unbearable whiteness in, fat spaces, the unbearable whiteness in, fat spaces, the unbearable whiteness in, fat spaces. Ooh, thinness and white supremacy will try to gaslight you all day long.
Talk about it. Talk about it.